This video contains spoilers on Better Call Saul up through and including Episode 7 of Season 5. So viewers, please be warned. The spoilers are about to begin.
Who got picked up this time?
Jorge Guzman.
Who the hell is Jorge Guzman?
So Goodman is now representing Lalo. And even a smooth operator like Goodman isn't sure how to give his client what he wants in this instance. But fortunately for Goodman, the link from Lalo to Nacho to Gus to Mike ultimately leads Mike to Saul's door with a solution. So Lalo can get his bail, $7 million, but that's no problem for Lalo. The interesting part in this storyline is the fact that Lalo is predictably cool as an assassin in the presence of the family members surviving his victim. Goodman, however, seems strangely conflicted about what he's gotten himself into. That strongly suggests that Goodman, while well on his way, isn't quite the hardened criminal lawyer he later becomes. In other words, defending a cold-blooded murderer like Lalo, that is setting off some red flags for Goodman. Saul is very comfortable with where he draws his invisible line of moral conduct, and yet Goodman instinctually is a little uncomfortable representing Lalo here. There's some true emotion coming from Goodman in that moment, and that comes back into play later when he shares this moment with Kim. Goodman is fishing for advice, but we'll get back to Kim later. Meanwhile, holy shit, it's Lydia and that guy, the Madrigal dude who takes his own life following the death of Gus in Breaking Bad. All of Gus's scheming and maneuvering are part of his bigger plan to distribute drugs without the interference of the cartel. Basically, Gus's entire story in prequel territory builds up to this, and all of his patience and planning culminates when he kills Don Eladio. So Gus is willing to burn down one of the Los Pollos branches, and he refuses to kill Lalo out of fear of going to war with the cartel long before his endgame. We have Lydia, we have Peter, we have mention of the mystery in Santiago, we have Mike, and we have the big mystery here, which is Lalo. We know Lalo is what ultimately improves the bond between Mike and Gus, and also the bond between Mike and Saul. We're seeing this unfold, and we also know Saul makes a Lalo reference in Breaking Bad. We can reasonably assume Nacho will also have direct involvement here, and I maintain that Nacho's situation has improved considerably since he is now dealing directly with Mike. Something big is coming up here as the fates of Lalo and Nacho are both pivotal to Gus's rise.
It seems I've upset you, so offer's off the table.
You upset me? How'd you upset me? How much for this?
That?
75 for all three? How much for an hour of your time?
You want to know what's weird? It's weird to offer a job to a man and in return have bowling balls thrown at your car. And prostitutes sent to your business lunch.
You can't take a ride on a Carnival cruise and only pay for a tugboat. You know what I'm saying?
I can leave if you need.
No.
You kill my brother and you say you're sorry?
I think he did what he did because of me.
Well, Howard, I guess that's your cross to bear. I'm so far beyond you! I'm like a god in human clothing! Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips!
So Howard isn't quite the dumbass we all thought he was. Howard actually did figure out that he was being played by Goodman. And while Goodman was playing around and having his fun with Howie, we now know for certain that Goodman's anger towards Howard has more to do with Goodman's guilt over Chuck. Saul is trying to convince himself that Howard is responsible for his brother's ill fate. But deep down, Goodman knows he was complicit in Chuck's demise. He just never came to terms with it. The truth of the matter is, immediately following Chuck's suicide, Jimmy, Kim, and Howard each engaged in actively passing their guilt on to one another. But in a very real way, they all did things that contributed to Chuck's demise. The fact remains that Chuck was very ill. Despite being an intellectual powerhouse, he was suffering from extreme mental illness. Howard knew this, Kim knew this, and Jimmy knew this all too well. Chuck was a prick, but he was a very sick man. And despite the fact they all knew that Chuck was a sick man, they all acted as if he was just a regular prick. Nobody stepped up and really helped Chuck when he needed it. They all turned a blind eye. And we know Chuck's illness was mental. This was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt when Huell made his slick reverse pickpocket move. And even before that, Dr. Cruz told Jimmy as much that he should have Chuck committed. Howard didn't really give a shit about Chuck the person, his mentor. Howard only cared about the reputation of HHM. Howard's still dealing with his guilt, and that's probably why he gave Jimmy the job offer in the first place. This is all the focal point of Goodman's anger towards Howard. But Goodman and Kim knew Chuck was ill too. Kim once recognized that Jimmy was too close to the situation, but she ultimately fed into Jimmy's delusion that Chuck was better off on his own. And Jimmy is really the one who screwed up most of all. He blew it when he didn't have Chuck committed, and he did it for selfish reasons. Because McGill was always striving to seek Chuck's approval, and despite his continued best efforts, he never got it. So in a very real way, Goodman's ill will towards Howard is easy for Goodman to justify because Howard did play his part. But this ill will towards Howard also allows Goodman to remain in denial about his own failures towards his mentally ill late brother. This is important because it's the key aspect of Goodman's evolution towards self-justification for any and all misdeeds. And as much as Goodman excels when it comes to being willfully ignorant of his own misdeeds, so too is Kim.
Okay, what if I have the urge to not tell you something, but I tell you and you don't like what you hear?
A new client, he's connected. I mean, he's a cartel guy from Mexico.
I just want to know what's going on.
He said I'd be a friend of the cartel.
Do you want to be a friend of the cartel?
Till death do you part.
I do.
I thought I should tell you.
I'm glad you did.
Till death do you part.
So Kim and Goodman discussed their upcoming arrangement much like they were discussing a legal case. Poor Huell is confused by the whole situation. He wants to pickpocket a nice ring for his pal, and he then assumes Kim must be pregnant. The ceremony itself is a rather dreary affair, but at least Huell was kind enough to snap a few photos. Later that night, in the midst of preparing to consummate their marriage, Goodman interrupts the proceedings to inform Kim he has a new client that would make him a friend to the cartel. Kim claims she is pleased that her new husband decided to fill her in, per their legal discussion about marriage and honesty from earlier. They resume their business, but one is left with the feeling that Kim wasn't really okay with this. She's just tricking herself into thinking she's okay with it. Much like Goodman is trying to trick himself into believing Howard is the scapegoat for Chuck's untimely fate. Once again, Chuck is that dangling loose end that subconsciously drives Jimmy in the McGill-Goodman transition. Remember, after Chuck's suicide, Jimmy was at first acting as if Chuck never existed. It wasn't until Kim forced the issue that Saul reluctantly acknowledged Chuck. But the manner in which Goodman did so was mockingly. It was all a big song and dance. The letter from Chuck that brought Kim to tears? For Goodman, this was all a gigantic hustle designed so that he wouldn't have his moment of reckoning. Goodman had again brought Kim to tears during the hearing where he used Chuck's death to his advantage. Kim and Howard both had their moment of reckoning, even if the guilt still lingers. But Goodman still never truly had his. He broke down last season that one scene in the car, but that wasn't because he was finally facing the music. In that moment, Goodman was feeling bad for himself, because whenever he gave it an honest try to overcome his slippin' Jimmy past, he believed he never got a fair shake. And Chuck was the personification of this for Jimmy. And this was all supported that when Jimmy gave his real speech, not the song and dance at the hearing, but the real speech, the one he gave to Christy Esposito, the winner takes it all. Christy being rejected because of her shoplifting past, this was symbolic of the way Chuck himself rejected Jimmy.
The shoplifter. Right, that's right. You didn't get it. You were never gonna get it.
Tell Howard to add another M to the firm, because it'll make it more symmetrical.
They dangle these things in front of you. They tell you got a chance, but I'm sorry, it's a lie. But I was a fool, playing by the rules. Remember, the winner takes it all. And all my life, I've wanted to make him proud.
I don't want to hurt your feelings.
I'll do everything in my power to be worthy of the name McGill.
But the truth is, you've never mattered all that much to me.
Wait, Jimmy, what?
It's all good, man.
So if Chuck's death represented the first major stumbling block for Wexler Goodman, then Saul representing Lalo is going to be the next major stumbling block. Lalo is the key to connecting everything that's happening this season. Kim thinks she's happy because Goodman is being honest and not holding back. But as always, wishy-washy Kim is full of shit. We know this because the evidence is there. The entire ordeal preceding this with Acker. Kim felt guilty that she was representing Mesa Verde when it hurt the little man, the guy just like her pro bono clients. She ultimately called Saul for his help, knowing full well that once she unleashed him, there was no stopping him. Kim was fine with this master plan, but once she started getting some glimpses into what this entailed, her holier-than-thou attitude emerged, and Goodman was left to his own devices. This is exactly what I'm expecting will happen here. Whatever happens with Lalo will undoubtedly involve an ugly side that Kim can't handle. Maybe this will lead to Kim's death, to death do us part, or maybe it will lead to Kim leaving Goodman. But I am now starting to think that the more likely outcome is that Goodman leaves Kim, because Kim still remains the main thing stopping Jimmy from going all in on Goodman. So I think in order to make that full transition complete, Goodman needs to be the one that ends things here. Saul will likely not do so until things get too hot, so I strongly suspect that Lalo's last stand is coming soon, and that people are going to die as a result of his wrath. Goodman calling a timeout just before they consummated their marriage was Jimmy's last cry for help, because he did feel something when he saw the family of Lalo's victim. Jimmy McGill is now the dweller on the threshold, and he is facing his shadow self with imperfect courage. It's ironic because when Kim tried forcing Goodman to cope with his guilt over the loss of Chuck, he never really did come to terms with that. But now, Goodman is almost begging Kim for direction, and she's all smiles and lovey-dovey. Kim doesn't even realize this was probably her last chance to resurrect Jimmy McGill. Lalo is the key to everything right now, and I for one cannot wait to see how this season finishes up. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful night.
Lalo didn't send you? No, Lalo?
Who?
Oh, thank God.
And someone way down here loses someone dear.
In sickness and in health, till death do you part.
I thought I should tell you.
I'm glad you did.
Till death do you part.
It's gotta be his family. Fred Whalen.
I mean, follow me, guys, but mosquitoes buzzing around you, bite you on the ass. You don't go gunning for the mosquito's attorney. I mean, all due respect, do I have to spell this out for you? We're not killing Badger, yo!
There's holmium and helium and hafnium and erbium and phosphorus and francium and fluorine and terbium and manganese and mercury and molybdenum, magnesium, dysprosium.
You're done. You are done!